Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids and Monsters video. Alright, another entry here based on one of your newer suggestions. The hits keep on coming. I haven't even touched some of the older suggestions yet because that's how interesting these newer suggestions have been. So absolutely, very happy to share all these new suggestions with you here. This one has to do with a suggestion tied to my beloved lumberjack series. Those of you that are fans of mine know how much I love those cryptids. It's because they always have some unique characteristic tied to them. Every single one of them, they'll have one unique aspect to them that makes them completely different from one another, makes them just stand out from each other. I mean, there was one like the red slug bolter that just comes down across the mountain. There's that, I think it was the hoop snake that goes into that hula hoop fashion type attack. There was the other one with the I can't remember the name of it, but it was the cat, the one that jaguar, the one that runs right into the trees and creates a huge noise. This one is yet another one with a similar characteristic, in this case having jointless legs. So this is a first when it comes to these creatures, and I'm talking about this. Instantly it looks both familiar and yet different at the same time, if it makes sense. Like you've seen it before, but there's little touches to it that make it different, and clearly a jointless leg seems to be the biggest thing. It's called the Hugag. I hope I'm saying that correctly, but this is an animal that is found there in the wilderness, specifically towards the Wisconsin, Minnesota area. So let's go ahead, let's talk about all the interesting information tied to this lumberjack cryptid. So what is this Hugag? Well, you have to go to around the Lake States, is what it's called. So it's a location there by Wisconsin, northern Minnesota, sometimes even extending towards the Canadian area, specifically with the Hudson Bay. So that's where you'll find this creature. Although I imagine it will probably still a little bit more difficult considering the vast wilderness that's there. You might as well be trying to find Bigfoot while you're at it, because so much of it is there, obviously, but so much of it hasn't been looked at by humans in who knows how many years. So lots of wilderness there that remains untouched to this day, except for apparently these lumberjack tales, these experiences tied to this creature, including apparently a capture and a killing that I'll talk about here in a minute. As far as how this thing looks like, it's basically your average moose. It's about the size of a moose, maybe in some cases a little bit larger. So it's something that is not necessarily going to be too dangerous also either. It just lumbers throughout the entire wilderness, just moving along, living its own life. It has these jointless legs that is there, I guess, for a specific purpose. It prevents it from grazing towards the ground, and this is because its upper lip, as you can see from the picture, extends pretty far down from its face. So the idea is, if this creature had joints in its legs and it was able to bend down, then its lips could accidentally get caught within the ground, or it could trip on itself accidentally as well. So it seems like evolution, or whatever was the case, caused this creature then to have both at the same time. I guess have its cake and eat it too. It can use its lips, its very long lips, to still eat, but then it made its legs jointless to ensure that it wasn't causing harm to itself. Interesting when you think about it, because it's the perfect solution to ensure that it can continue on with its merry old days. But yes, that's what it looks like. It's essentially the size of a moose, no antlers of course, but its lips are very long, its legs being jointless, and its head and its neck are considered to be leather, like almost like a leathery type skin, but completely hairless there. Everywhere else though, it's like the traditional fur you would find within an animal. But the only other distinction is the fact that it has these ears that flop downward. I imagine more along the lines of like your average dog, the ones that have those long floppy ears, and then also sometimes it has a long bushy tail, a shaggy coat, and it seems like the way it moves, it makes it seem like it's a dinosaur, like it has a prehistoric appearance, and it's all tied again to its jointless legs. But that's what it's for. These legs themselves, it allows it to travel a long period of time without having to have any undue burden within its travels. This also makes sense too, because what's the most common thing that people Now, I don't know about animals, but one can presume the same thing. But people commonly complain about later on in life when they walk a lot or run a lot is their joints. Like their joints start feeling worse and worse. So, such is the case with this animal here, the perfect solution that it has being jointless, then it can travel for very, very, very long periods of time. So, it makes it a perfect animal to travel throughout who knows how many thousands or hundreds of miles of forest without having to have anything in terms of an undue burden. So as far as how this creature actually sleeps, because it cannot lie down. It always has to stand up, quote unquote, stand up because of those legs. All it does then is it just simply finds a tree and it leans up against it. And then that's it. That's a solution there as well. It just simply embraces against a tree. The tree holds it up and then it just goes to sleep. Also, the way it eats, because of those long lips, instead of having to eat off of the ground, as I mentioned earlier, it simply uses these trees again and eats off of the bark. So another perfect solution there, because obviously the bark itself will encompass the entire tree, so it's not like it's having to reach down to the ground or very high. No, it could just go as it is, just walking around, and it'll come across your average tree, and then there it is. It'll just simply eat the twigs, eat the bark. It'll strip it completely within that area. That's how you also know you're in the presence of either one of these hugags or a bunch of them, because if you see trees that mysteriously have its bark removed within what could be the mouth level of your average, in this case hugag slash elk, I'm sorry, moose sized creature, then you'll know that this thing is around. Now, as far as its capture, apparently there have been some hunters that have taken the practice of taking advantage, in this case, of the creature and that aforementioned mouth level, because what they do is they count on this hugag to come across the trees and eat at that specific level. All they do is that they either strip certain areas, cut down into it using, I guess, pick knife, a knife, a pickaxe, whatever is the case. They cut at it at a certain angle, not enough to topple over the tree, but enough to make it weak at that specific point. And then that way, when the hugag comes around and then starts eating at that specific level, then the tree, now that it has more of its bark taken off, enough at that point, it allows it to fall over, and then it kills the hugag. So quite an easy way when you think about it when it comes to taking care of this hugag. You don't necessarily have to chase it. You don't necessarily have to wait for it to come around to you. No, in this case, just pick at several trees all around certain areas, and then just come back, I guess, later on, and chances are you'll have some of those trees toppled over, and it's because of the hugag inadvertently eating one of those specific weak points. So kind of cruel when you think about it, kind of sinister, but it does make sense when it comes to that. Apparently the last known hugag that was encountered and was killed was somewhere in northern Minnesota, specifically in Turtle River. And when it was killed, it was weighed, and it was estimated to be about 1,800 pounds. So this was an interesting thing that was encountered there as well. As far as the explanations of what this hugag is, it could be, again, a different variation of your average moose or elk, just something else that, I guess, strayed along the evolutionary line and then just became its own unique creature. I think that's the most likely thing there too. It's just something that just is so rare that we haven't encountered too many of them, and who knows, maybe there's not any left afterward, but it was certainly prevalent, it seems, during the lumberjack era, the Wild West frontier, in other words. Another theory is it could be a long lost form of a dinosaur. Looking at one here, in fact, it's called the Paraceratherium, if I'm not mistaken. So this is a creature that could have survived all those years way back when, and is now still living today. Maybe it's grown smaller in size to adapt to the environment, to adapt to these years, but otherwise it could be a form of this creature, which also makes sense because it does look very similar, except that the lips are much smaller than usually depicted on a Hugag. But then again, it could be that evolution made those lips longer because of the many years that passed by. And then the legs themselves, if looked at from far away, can look jointless. I mean, they look long, they look skinny, they don't look like they have many joints on them. So somewhere from far away, one could misinterpret it as being jointless, or again, it could be that evolution changed it outright. But that's just another theory into the type of animal that this creature is. But yes, another one of my beloved cryptids involving the lumberjack tails, the Hugag. If anyone has any more info about this creature, post those comments below, share them with everyone. It's always good to have these comments posted on there, and then that way everyone can see them. But no known encounters more recently other than the Wild West period, so unfortunately nothing recent to share, but it's still kind of fun to think that somewhere out there, maybe to this day, this creature is still roaming around using those jointless legs to travel all those hundreds of miles on its daily quest to just live its life. So pretty interesting stuff. So alright everybody, thanks again as always, take care.